My name is Bess Emere and I am thrilled to have you here. Hit the like button, subscribe and follow us on social media if you're not already to be notified of future updates. Welcome to Introduction to Journalism. Once again, my name is Bess Emere. If you are taking this course, drop your name and the name of your school in the comment section so that we can interact. A world view of journalism development. Journalism is the art and science of gathering, selecting and processing information, ideas, or intelligence for dissemination to the public. News gathering concerns the what, where, and how of identifying, selecting, collecting, and processing of information for publication in the newspaper, magazine, radio, or TV. Now that we have the definitions out of the way, let's take a proper look at what it means. There is journalism for print, that's those who share their news in print, like we have newspapers. Then journalism for broadcast, that's radios, etc. Though they are basically the same and follow same set of values in getting their news, their difference lies in the fact that radios use words, while newspapers and magazines tend to use complex words which are not conversational. When we talk about good journalism, we mean intelligent gathering of relevant facts. Now, that is not easy at all, but it is the number one and most important job of a journalist. Nose for news is an ability to recognize possibilities of an item of information, an ability to recognize clues which, through their casual search, lead to the discovery of important information. The capacity to recognize the relative importance of a number of facts concerning the same general subject. Notes for news is a journalistic term that describes the pulling force, zeal, anxiety, and sensitivity of a journalist in the process of news gathering. The journalist is not expected to intervene, but to weigh the relevance of an answer to a question, especially now that people tell journalists what they think the journalist wants to hear instead of what the journalist needs. Please bear in mind that technology here does not refer to mechanism or machines, but the way they are used. Robert Desmond, a journalism historian, talks about how the Romans' first newspaper was used to motivate soldiers during their war, that they were winning, and how there were plans to increase their pension and pay them soonest. You get the drill. Desmond traced the history of the ideographic and phonetic types of writing. The phonetic used a 26-letter Latin alphabet and an Arabic numbering system. But before then, there was the ideographic system that used stylized drawing of objects. When combined, their drawings could represent abstract ideas and objects. The three great early civilizations in India, Egypt, and China probably developed their own ideographic systems of writing independently. Today, only the Sino-Japanese versions survive. This may seem strange to you to grasp how one is expected to learn literally thousands of characters because we are lucky we only have to learn 26 letters and 9 figures. Desmond went further to outline the development of writing surfaces, from animal skins to woven papyrus, then to the invention of paper in China about 1800 years ago. Though Europe recorded their major breakthrough in paper production in the early 19th century, chemists discovered a way to make paper using wood fiber. Then engineers invented machines that could make the papers continuously as a long strip. American dominance talks about the development in journalism technology from the United States perspective. They are probably right because after Walter Koenig's steam-powered rotary press was invented and used in Germany in 1811, which was 3 years before it was used in America, most other significant journalism technologies came from America, like telegraph, telephone, television, radio, etc. There are ethnic-centered bias today. Who cares where journalism technology emerged? Next is the history of journalism in England. Cranfield, 1975, traced how the Tudor monarchy took away the freedom of 1484 Act until the Crown had absolute control of all publications. In 1740, King Frederick the Great of Persia introduced a motion that gave the press partial freedom by removing all censorship. He even tolerated attacks on himself in books, plays, pamphlets, and especially in newspapers. He found in the newspaper he himself, like his own that ordered the newspaper to be established in Berlin. Then in 1770, Johann Struensee, a doctor from Prussia, and his wife, Queen Caroline Matilda, took over the ruling of the country. One of his first edicts was granting the press total freedom. Unfortunately, he and his wife became a victim of it. After a press campaign, he was tried and beheaded in 1772. In 1997, the world's first law to specifically guarantee the freedom and limitations of the press was introduced in Sweden. Now, freedom of the press has been granted in many nations. Anthony Smith offers an explanation why the birthplace of printing, that is China, was one of the last places to introduce mass circulation newspapers. Smith outlines 4 stages before the 19th century in the European development of publishing news. We have the relations, contained a description of a single event that was written long after it happened. 2. Collection of these relations into a publication known as Coranto. 3. Journals, which dealt with more recent events and were published weekly and ranked their information in chronological order. 4th and finally, Mercury, where the writers adopted some of the practices used by today's journalists. Like Smith, Jeremy Tunstall in newspaper history from the 17th century to the present day identifies 4 stages in the development of journalism. However, Tunstall argues that these stages are myths created to raise the value and status of journalists. One of these stages was the heroic struggle against the state's control of the press, culminating in the establishment of the Fourth Estate. Calling it the Fourth Estate reinforced this first myth, which suggested that there were four parts of government. Second myth stage was the key role in the Fourth Estate in maintaining a mature democracy as watchdogs. The third was called transformation of journalists from venal hacks into socially responsible people, committed to the ideals of objectivity, accuracy, and truth. And fourth, the contest within the press between commercial and non-commercial goals, between conceptions of the press as an industry and as a public service. The Presbyterian Mission Printing Press at Calabar in 1846 marked the beginning of print journalism in Nigeria. So the presence of the printing press had a religious undertone because most of everything that was printed at the time were focused on religious and cultural matters. Then in 1854 in Abeokuta, a missionary journalist, Reverend Henry Townsend, established a printing press. 5 years after, in 1859, a newspaper whose name when translated into English means newspaper in Yoruba and Eba, for Eba and Yoruba people, was founded. It published fortnightly, that's every 2 weeks, but later became bilingual in 1860. When the English version was added to the vernacular edition, Iwe Irohin was exclusively a religious newspaper. The alien-dominated press simply covers the period non-Nigerians enjoyed the freedom of publishing newspapers for Nigerians. The first of this era was recorded by Robert Campbell on June 6, 1863, called the Anglo-African Newspaper, a weekly newspaper which distributed between 30 to 50 copies and was sold for 3 pence. The main goal for Campbell was to take advantage of the growing interest in Western education in Lagos. Campbell's publication was Nigeria's second newspaper, launched after Townsend's, and it carried both local and overseas news. It stopped existing on December 30th, 1865 due to financial issues. Other newspapers founded by aliens When we're talking about aliens, talking about foreigners, we have Iwe Irohin Eku, founded by Andrew Thomas in 1888, November 3rd. The Weekly Times by John Fine Jackson, a Liberian-born businessman, on May 3rd, 1890. The Lagos Weekly Record, founded by John B. Jackson in 1890. This newspaper became one of the most popular press, having the greatest continuity and long life in the history of early newspapers in Nigeria. It was also reputed for its strong views on politics and and total political independence for Africa. Continue, we have the Standard paper by George Alfred Williams on September 16, 1894. The Lagos Echo, founded by J.S. Lay on September 12, 1898. Nigeria Pioneer, founded by Kitoyi Ajasa in 1914, was one of the first indigenous newspapers. It was unpopular because it was pro-governmental and did not encourage radicalism of the nationalists. It died in 1936. Next was N.S. Ikoli with the Nigerian Messenger on March 10, 1921. It is said that he is the first Yoruba man to make it in plain Lagos politics. His paper, The African Messenger, lasted for 5 years before the then Nigerian Printing and Publishing Company, that's NPPC, in 1926 bought it, and it became Nigerian Daily Times. Daily Times flourished because it remained pro-governmental under Ernest and got financial support from Mirror of London in 1948. It became a subsidiary of London Daily Mirror. Few other papers that coexisted with the Nigerian Daily Times and afterwards were the Lagos we have the Lagos Daily News by Herbert Macaulay and Akelade in 1927. We have the Nigerian Daily Telegraph by Akin Fabemu. Please, my Yoruba brothers and sisters, people should not crucify me. On November 12, 1927. Akede Echo by I.B. Thomas on June 1st, 1921. The Nigerian Daily Mail by N.S. Ikoli in 1930. The West African Pilot in 1937 by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the pillar in Nigerian journalism, well positioned and could be compared to a local training school for journalists because it produced great future journalists. Amongst them were Chief Anthony Enahoro and Chief Tony Momo. Also, the Pilot was the first Nigerian newspaper to introduce cartoon strips into Nigerian journalism. The West African Pilot was the most popular nationalist newspaper of all times in Nigeria. Journalistically, the West African Pilot brought about great innovations in the general newspaper outlook and typography. It was noted for its tremendous use of pictures and modern headline forms. Dr. Azikiwe also owned and edited other papers such as the Eastern Nigerian Guardian, the Eastern Sentinel, and the Northern Advocates. By 1958, two newspapers, that's the Daily Express and Sunday Express, were launched from a partnership pact between Roy Thompson of Canada and the then ruling party in the Western region. This resulted in the formation of Allied Newspaper of Nigeria, a new body that absorbed the former Amalgamated Press of Nigeria. The modern Nigerian press history covers the period of independence in Nigeria and years afterwards. The Nigerian press then was first nationalistic, later very regionalistic in nature, mostly promoting sectional, tribal, and very selfish interests of those in leadership positions. This was confusing to the press in knowing their roles. Hence, justify their very limited success. The press during the Civil War period can be said to have been characteristically propagandistic, partisan and subjective, and in terms of a national sense of purpose, very mischievous as well as destructive to the individual human personality. The principal actors of the Civil War were Lieutenant Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu on the Biafran side and General Yakubu Gowon on the Nigerian or National Front. The central reason behind the eruption of the war is attributed to the pogrom committed by the northern Muslims against southern Christians, more especially the Christian Igbos. This resulted in the secession move of Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu and his government, that's Eastern Nigeria, from the national geopolitical composition. The press at this period was said to be exercising the highest degree of propaganda in the northern scene. This was exemplified by the initial reference of Radio Biafra to General Gowon as Boy Yakubu Wagon, and the retortion of the federal radio to Ojukwu as a rebel leader. The press became blind to the pervasive social ills, oblivious of the erosion of individual and corporate rights of citizens, and uncaring of, if not participants in the corruption that infested the Nigerian body politics. Though generated a general sense of awareness among the people, the regards to Gowon's cardinal program of 3 R's, that's rehabilitation, reconstruction, and reconciliation. The military men paved way for the return of civilian government, a fresh opportunity for the masses to have a say and exercise their potentials in the governance of their country. This time, the parliamentary system of government which existed in the First Republic was discarded, and the presidential system, molded out of American political structure, was brought forward for experimentation. Regardless of this, the First Republic restarted its ugly structure again, making no change. The journalists allowed themselves to be used as tools for self-satisfaction. The death, resurrection, and revitalization of the Nigerian press was realized during the Biafran regimes. It was a period when all newspapers and periodicals wrote almost the same thing in almost the same manner with an almost uniform pagination. In the same vein, the radio and TV stations were almost broadcasting the same thing at the same time slot and almost at the same length of time. This censorship challenged both the media actors, consumers, and general citizenry. The journalists became once again truly reflective of their profession and became dedicated to the ideals of journalism. This determination to be right resulted when their initial sycophancy earned them not only Decree No. 4 and Decree No. 2, under which several journalists were harassed, tried, and imprisoned. Publications were seized and publishing organizations closed. The decline of the Buhari regime gave way to President Ibrahim Babangida, whose government took advantage of his predecessor's weakness and promised to make a libertarian press and social condition that would enhance human rights. Then came an immediate abrogation of stringent decrees like Decree No. 4 and release from jail of some of the press actors that were detained, etc. The authoritarian press returned in the regime of General Sani Abacha. The news industry is a complex one. The resources of the owner determines the structure, influence, and size of the organization. Regardless of these, some key personnel must be put in place to carry out certain functions. These key personnel and their duties are: we have 1. The editorial staffs are the reporters and editors. The reporters have the special duty of collecting news. Without them, other personnel will have nothing to work with. The editor is the main gatekeeper of the newsroom. There are many kinds of editors: those who edit news, pictures, editorial or opinion pages, sports, features, layouts, etc. Others are designated to facilitate the process itself, like sub-editors or copy editors. Editors make corrections in facts, spellings, grammar, names, dates, and claims. They also edit to ensure that the copy fits into the house style book or the organization. An editor, therefore, is a manager as well as a supervisor. In order to perform such skill, an editor must not just be intelligent, but must be a motivator, have a good command of English, have a sense of humor, have a nose for news, have the wealth of experience in journalism, and have good professional manner. All of this must be in addition to being a good policy maker, being creative and dynamic, being a good team leader and worker, and being responsible ethically and professionally. A production manager usually heads the production department. The production manager not only ensures that the news copy sent by the editorial department is typeset, he also ensures that the proofreaders thoroughly check the typeset materials, while the paste-up men situate stories and artwork where such materials belong. The manager also ensures that the plate-making process is in order. The production department has 1. Compositors, that's those who typeset by hand. 2. Typesetting machine operators. 3. Proofreaders, those who check the gallery proofs side by side the original copy for errors. We have 4. Makeup personnel, those who assemble types and photos, engravings in page forms. We have the stone hands, they arrange pages in proper sequence. Then finally we have the printers, those who operate the machines that turn out the newspaper in the form that readers read. The business department is the third and last stage. The principal personnel of this department are the circulation and advertising managers and staff. The circulation manager, along with his team, does the marketing job. He is responsible for sales of the newspaper copies. He must therefore strategize on how the copies of the newspaper can be distributed to the readers. Newspaper is a business. Most newspapers have managing directors whose function is that of an MD in any business. He is to see that the business is run efficiently. They are referred to as the lifeblood of mass media. So it is important that it is managed by capable and experienced hands. Adjunct departments consist of the personnel accounts and public relations units. The personnel manager is responsible for all administrative functions. The word news means different things to different people, taking into consideration the varying levels of political, social, economic, cultural, or geographical orientations in the world. News should be seen as an account of an event among events which constitutes a new kind of input or information that changes the status of what had existed. Majority of media practitioners have come to embrace the following criteria for determinants of news. A popular saying within the world of journalism is that nothing is as dead as yesterday's news. For instance, a report of a bomb blast in Lagos State this morning appears fresher and current than a report of the same bomb blast in Lagos last month. Proximity has to do with nearness. For example, Nigerians in America will be a thing of interest to Nigerians in Nigeria than reports about Cameroonians in America. In Animal Farm, there's a saying, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, may pass for prominence for news determinants, like all men are newsworthy, but some are more newsworthy than others. For example, a news story that claims that a man was shot dead in Aso Rock, Abuja, does not attract as much attention as reporting that the president of Nigeria has been shot dead in Aso Rock Villa, Abuja. Consequence as a determinant of news events means that the interest of the public is upper, most in weighing the implications or effects of an event reported. For instance, if an accident involves 80 people in number, the report is likely to be considered for publication than an accident that involves a person or two. Other stories that are often selected using this criterion include those of price changes, epidemic, pestilence, national strikes like NLC and ASU strikes in Nigeria. A news story about a dog rescuing a baby from a swimming pool when the parents of the child were attending to other needs represents a good example of one of the perspectives of human interest. There are three major types of news reports. Straightforward news reports are the product of the conventional answer to 5 W's and H. Straightforward news may be based on hard, soft human interests. Hard news are stories that deal with topical issues that are tied to governmental affairs concerning economic, social, and political issues. They are usually filled with facts and figures. They also form the core of most newspapers' straightforward news coverage. Soft news stories deals with social and ceremonial events in the society, like investitures, coronation, birthdays, marriages, etc. While the human interest arouse emotional feeling all through, mostly generated from conflict, controversy, crime, disaster, accident, adventure, children, etc. An investigative report is a better quality reporting that is distinct from the straightforward news type. Its degree of thoroughness is greater than that of a straight news report. It normally deals with reports on serious subjects. It involves a lot of interviewing and digging of facts. It is time and money consuming and risky. The reporter is tied up to rewards though. It demands patience and persistence. Interview is a bedrock of news gathering business. Basics of investigative interviewing are preparation, control, information. Interpretative reporting is a kind of news report that demands the reporter's injection of his opinion or some form of editorialization of or comment on the issue reported. News values refer to those qualities of the news that give meaning and integrity to the sound journalistic practice. Components of such a sound journalistic practice are: objectivity is the ability of the reporter to bridge the knowledge gap between the thing, event he or she reports and the real event or thing itself. In other words, objectivity requires that a complete, unbiased, truthful, comprehension and intelligent account of an event be given in a context that gives meaning to the reader. Balance derives its essence from objectivity. It simply draws the journalist closer to the task of appropriating the focus treatment, prominence, time, space and privilege of any news event with fairness and equality. Currency is a virtue of news, just as anyone who asks for news wants to know the status of an event he either did not know about or wants to know about. Currency calls for immediacy, freshness, and recency of the report. Accuracy as a news value connotes exactness and truthfulness. Accuracy stresses that all the facts about persons, their ages, address, their duties, etc. are correctly reported. Virtue complements the often overstressed essence of communication to share meaning and understanding. The entire essence of a report stands to be defeated if meaning is not shared. Meaningful reports are those that are brief, because people do not have all the time in the world to read or listen to news. Concise, because readers need direct and straight guidance. And clear, devoid of ambiguity or double meaning. In practice, three structures of news presentation are known. Okay, let me try and make it simpler to understand. On a scale of 1 to 4, with 1 being the beginning or least important, and 4 being the climax, or you can say the most important. That's pyramid style starts at 1, that is the least important, and makes it all the way to 4. That's the most important. Inverted pyramid style is the opposite, starting at 4, the climax, to 1, the beginning. Modified inverted pyramid comes next. Here, the news starts at 4, the most important, then moves to 1, the beginning, continuing down to 2 and 3. News writing begins from the time that the reporter sets out to gather facts. As the facts are gathered, the slants of news stories are also planned. Conventionally, news writing starts with the introduction. The introduction is technically called the lead. The lead is the first paragraph or two of any news report. It does not extend to the third paragraph. Note: the lead usually provides answers to basic questions of 5 W's and H. Here are a few notable lead types. Cartridge lead presents the gist in very few words. Punch lead presents a non-specific angle of an event. The crowded lead emphasizes many aspects of an event instead of concentrating on one. The astonisher lead uses superlative expressions to break the news. The short tail lead is broken into 2 sentences expressing 2 related ideas. Summary lead summarizes the whole story and gives details later. Copy editing may be referred to as copy editing, news editing, copy reading. They all mean the same thing. But a copy editor must have good knowledge of the subject and be an expert in the language used before meaningful editing can be achieved. An editor should be flexible and tolerant, well versed in the subject and other liberal arts. Editing is needed to eliminate unnecessary details and make corrections. Every writer needs an editor, no matter how good they are. The quality of every newspaper is dependent on the array of its copy readers. The copy desk is the heart of the newspaper, and the character of the newspaper is determined by its copy desk. The copy desk has 3 major functions. Creative function. First, the desk judges the news of the day and makes decisions about how it shall be presented. Second, it assembles single stories and spreads from materials originating from a variety of sources. Copy editors write headlines, captions, and outlines. Another area of creativity deals with space management, which is the major problem of print media as against the problem of time in the electronic media. Managerial function consists of 3 activities. 1. The desk directs the work of the compositors and printers. Managerial function can also be called administrative function. The major divisions of a typical newspaper organizations are the business, the editorial, and the production divisions. In the editorial division are the editor, copy desk, editorial writers, and photographic section. Copy desk directs and adjusts stories. They also prepare fillers and copy and time copy. Fillers are ready-made stories specifically designed to fill up extra spaces in the newspaper. These stories must, as a matter of necessity, be fresh and timely. On the other hand, time copy are those copies that are funny and entertaining and of general interest. Policing functions. The copy desk chief function is the job of policing the content of the paper. It is the most important of all the functions because it safeguards the paper against errors, it corrects grammatical errors, cross-checks facts, and marks necessary interpretations to avoid ambiguity. A copy editor needs physical and intellectual tools. The physical tools come under specific headings, including equipment, reminders, copy editing symbols, and references. Obvious physical tools comprise, the special editing pencil with broad and soft lead and slightly bigger than the normal ordinary HB pencil. A clean eraser for neatly cleansing any wrongly written words or sentences. Scissors and paste which are supposed to be used only when necessary. A typewriter that will be used only when it will do the job quicker than other tools. Copy editor also needs certain reminder within reach. Some of these include the office style sheet and the headline schedule. Also included is a detailed headline count system which serves as a guide for the headline writing. The shorthand he uses always tells the compositor how he wants the original copy changed. The copy reading symbols vary slightly from newspaper to newspaper and depends on what each organization is used to. Reference of any kind constitutes yet another set of physical tools also employed by the copy reader. Minimum list of reference necessary in every desk consists of a dictionary, the city directory, the state handbook, city and area telephone director, good atlas, city, country and state maps, who is who in Nigeria, the world almanac, year hooks, Roger Terrasus, book of quotations, Fowler's dictionary of modern English usage, Webster dictionary with its rich information, and other general references. The most important of the copy editor's tools are the intellectual tools. The list of the copy editor's intellectual tools is endless. A headline is a sentence built around action verb. A headline states what the story is about clearly, so it saves time for one to find what they are looking for. It tells the seriousness and significance of the story to the readers. The headline schedule is a sample of headlines used by a particular newspaper. It shows the point, size, types, and typefaces available and the precise form they must take. Every newspaper has its own headline schedule as distinct from others. Headline writing does not use a different language of its own. It must use language common to people and which they must understand. In headline writing, the writer is expected to tell the essentials just as the lead story does, since most headlines are based on the lead. It is highly advisable that the headline writer strives at all times to be specific to avoid ambiguity. The essence of headline counting is to determine the amount of space to be earmarked for the headline in page planning. In the headline count, certain basic data are required and must be known by the person counting the headline before he could arrive at the correct answer. The data include maximum unit count per line, the number of decks in the headline to be cast, and the type of letters whether uppercase or lowercase or a combination of both, to be used in casting the headline. I would have loved to explain this in detail, but in this particular case, experience is the best teacher, and no one can be perfect in headline counting without trials and errors. The headline order is always stated on the headline copy, which is usually a small clean sheet of paper. Each headline on a page must get its own separate head copy. The headline order usually tells three things. First, it tells the number of columns in which the head is to be set. Second, it tells the size of the head. And thirdly, it tells the number of lines. Style refers to anything from the philosophy and personality of the writer to his choice of words in sentences. According to McCremion, 1974, style is a product of all the choice a writer makes in working out the implications of his purpose. If the choices are consistent, they reveal his personality and the way he structures and expresses his ideas, his view of the real subject and his readers. We have three types of styles. Formal style is often called the academic style. It is characterized by a tone that is high-sounding, dignified and eloquent, with extensive vocabulary that avoids the use of contractions. That is, I am instead of I am, or there instead of they are. The informal style is a style that is multi-dimensional, a mixture of colloquial and formal styles, the kind used in lectures and newspapers. The colloquial style is a style of writing that is basically conversational. It uses the kind of expression people use when they are together quite informally. Such a style is used in writing when the writer wants to give the impression of talking directly and intimately to his reader. Moving on, news writing is an art whose skills have to be acquired. Essentials of good journalistic writing, or the 9 C's and S in news, has to be clear in the expression, so there is no misinterpretation. It should be concise, that is brief and to the point, while being accurate and maintaining cautiousness, that's politeness and civility. It should be candid, that is frank and concrete, while being complete. Coherence has to do with sticking together logically in harmony. The purpose of news writing is to communicate meanings through news and not to confound or confuse. Therefore, simplicity is required. Identification in news reporting has to do with the distinctive physical attributes of persons used or involved in the news. Attribution in news writing involves the disclosure of the identity of information source. Attribution functions to give credibility to the news report. To capitalize means to set word in uppercase. The main purpose is to lay emphasis on what is written. As a rule in English language constructions, all proper nouns, trade names, names of associations, clubs, yes, organizations, religions, nations, races must be capitalized. That they must start with a capital letter. Abbreviated words are often the shorter versions of their full forms. They are used because spaces in the newspaper need to be saved. Time in the radio and television need not be wasted. Abbreviation also reduces the cost of production or production of news items. This is based on the house style or convenience and space-saving purposes. While some numbers are rounded up for easy reading, some are not spelled out in order to save space. Usually, it is expected that the figures 1 to 9 should be spelled out, while 10 and above can be written in figure. The rules of punctuation are the same for any type of composition. Yes, for any type of composition. They may be used to break up or stop sentences, etc. As for word division, it is important that reporters avoid the division of words between lines. Do not divide hyphenated words except at the syllable where the regular type comes. Example, mother-in-law. Do not begin a line with hyphen or divide words between pages. We have come to the end of Introduction to Journalism. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section. I'll attend to them one after the other. Cheers.